Okay. Hello and welcome to a happy edition of, or semi-happy edition of Sutton Impact Family Style. I'm Jason.
Bill. And you know what, Jace? We both just finished watching the Steelers Patriots game.
We did.
And while I'm happy that the Steelers won, it's not the kind of euphoria that I would like to feel. Like if they would have beat them 35-7, I would be feeling a lot better.
I'm in the boat where I'm fine with a 17-10 win, stopping Brady, twice in the fourth quarter when they needed to. If they had beat the Browns, the Raiders, the Broncos, and some of those other terrible teams that they lost to,
Yep.
and they were fighting for, if they hadn't looked as bad as they've looked at times to go along with as good as they.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think it's more the totality of the season. Like, I don't, normally a win against the Patriots, even a win at Patriots at home, you're excited. You're like, okay, maybe this team, but then you're like,
I mean, the three games where they lost in the fourth quarter. I mean, I don't know if you saw the stat or not, that in the first half, the last 2 minutes, they've given up the fewest points in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
But in the last 2 minutes of the game, they've given up the most points.
Yes.
So it was all set up there for that to happen, but they played with a lot of passion, a lot of heart, a lot of emotion. I give the fans credit for really being into the game.
Well, they've also, and we almost saw it hurt them today. I mean, their kicker's been terrible.
Yes, he has.
I mean, he's cost them a couple games this year. Like, even you go back to the Cleveland game, he missed a field goal in regulation. He leads the league in missed field goals and extra points.
Yeah.
I mean, that's cost him at least 2 games. Some dumb Roethlisberger mistakes, and then that Chargers game was just a freaky game where Steelers are knocking into each other and the ball flies in the air for a touchdown instead of a pick. So
it's crazy. Well, you know what really impressed me the most about the game today, and it has nothing to do with the game?
And what would that be?
Tony Romo as a commentator.
Tony Romo's great as a commentator.
I think he's the best guy on TV.
Someone made an interesting point about Tony Romo, though, and commentators in general.
Okay.
They said that the longer guys have been out of the league, the worse commentators they are. And that Tony Romo is in that sweet spot where he's good on TV, but he's been in the league recently enough that he knows the NFL as it is today.
And he knows the players, he knows the teams. Yeah, that's a good point.
And that guys, that have been out of the league for 20 years just, you can talk football, and I'm sure they're still, know more about football than,
Yeah.
or forgot more about football than I know, and whatever that cliched saying is. But, I think when you're not in it as frequently, I think it. But back to, I guess.
Really enjoyed him as a commentator. He really provided some really good insight.
I do as well.
I really think we're going to happen.
And this responds to when we were texting back and forth with our uncle about the Steelers. And as I think I've asked on this podcast before, like, considering it's a professional sports job where you make probably close to, if you a 10-year career, you're going to make millions of dollars doing it. Why are there not better Why are there not like hundreds of kickers in the NFL, or hundreds of guys where you don't even have to pay anybody that, There's just
because anybody can stand there and kick it until you have guys rushing at you with the pressure on you in the game.
Right, but it's the same with running. Running backs. You figure the Steelers are on. Jalen Samuels rushed for 150 yards today, and it's pretty common that if you have a decent offensive line, you can bring in the third or fourth running back, and they look great. Whereas kickers, it just kickers and commentators, it just feels like back to Tony Romo to sort of tie these 2 points together. There's my entire life.
I've been critical about the way they used Jalen Samuels all year.
Yes.
I thought they never played him enough, and I thought he had a lot to give.
But I also feel like throughout my life of watching football, there's always a lot of bad to mediocre commentators, and you figure that shouldn't be either.
No, it shouldn't be.
And I don't know.
I was critical when they first hired Tony Romo, but I've been very, very pleased.
Yeah.
So do we want to talk about let's kind of take a look at the playoff situation.
Yes.
So, Kansas City's not a lock for the number 1 seed.
No, they are not. Because they're not a lock for their division. Yeah.
Right. They're tied with the Chargers, right?
They're tied with the Chargers. And,
They must have some tiebreaker over the Chargers because they're listed number 1.
I think they split the head-to-head, and I think they beat more common opponents.
Oh, that's right. And the Chiefs have a better record in the Western Division than the Chargers do.
Exactly.
That's
So
what it is.
If the Chiefs went out, they control the number one seed. But I mean, sneakily, the Texans are now they're now 10-4.
Yeah.
And they just keep winning. I mean,
they were lucky to win yesterday.
They were. And they're one of those teams you look at, you just don't understand how they're winning. Especially because you thought with J.J. Watt back this year, they would have been a contender. I mean, they were coming into the preseason, they were a contender. And then they went and played New England, and New England just blew their doors off. And then at first you don't think much of it, but New England's also lost double-digit points to Detroit and a couple of other bad teams. So,
well, we know New England's 3-5 on the road this year, so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Because that means if things stay as they are now, they have to go on the road in the second round of the playoffs.
Right.
If everything holds as is. And you can very easily see it holding as is. I think this.
I don't see New England losing any of their last 2 games.
No. And I think the Chiefs are talented enough they should win their last 2. And the Texans just keep winning. I have no idea how, but they keep doing it. The Steelers, I think, are the most vulnerable because they play in New Orleans next week. And I have, as I live here currently, like that is a loud, loud place.
Yep.
And
tough place to win.
Tough place to win, and they're going head to head with the Rams to try to see who gets. The Rams play tonight, so if the Rams win tonight, they need to win. They'll need to win the Steeler game to hold serve. They'll need to win Monday night and then win next week to continue to hold serve for the. I'm sure they don't want to go to LA. They want the playoffs to go through the Saints.
The big surprise for me today was Indianapolis shutting out Dallas.
That was shocking.
Because Dallas has been playing very, very well since they've gotten Amari Cooper, and I was shocked that they lost. And I was more shocked they were shut out.
Especially because Indianapolis is, Andrew Luck's been a nice story, and Eric Ebron is finally giving fantasy owners what they wanted after they've dropped him for the last 6 years. But, you just did not see Indianapolis' defense shutting anybody out, even at home.
No, not at all.
I mean, you still have Ezekiel Elliott. You've got, Gallup. I mean, but I do think we have a whole section of quarterbacks in the NFL right now. And Dak Prescott is probably the prime example of that, of guys that are on the cusp of getting that big extension. But you got to wonder, how good is Dak Prescott? Like, if you're the Cowboys and you're looking for the next, if he's going to get a 5-year, presumably, $120 million contract, so much guaranteed, does he really, is he a Super Bowl winning quarterback? I watch him overthrow. I mean, he overthrows Gallup 5 times a game. Like, he seems like 10 years ago, you'd be like, Dak Prescott would be the perfect backup. I don't know if he's the kind of quarter, I think now you've got to ask
it's been an odd season, though.
Yeah, but you also got to ask the same question about Carson Wentz. He's been hurt, including his last year in college, every single year. He hasn't looked that good when he's been healthy this year. Your Super Bowl, you won without him.
I think you have to evaluate him next year. I think this year you couldn't evaluate him.
No, but he's also due for the big extension.
Yeah, I don't know what you do. You roll the dice.
You roll the dice. Yeah.
I'm be happy with Baker Mayfield right now, though.
Baker Mayfield looks really, really good.
And Sam Darnold looked good.
Yeah, and people forget Sam Darnold was one of the youngest players in that draft. He just turned 21 this year, and he's starting quarterback in the NFL. Josh Rosen has been interesting, I suppose. He's a great runner. He might be one of the best running backs in the NFL this year. Unfortunately, he's their quarterback. Same with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
They can both run the ball.
And showed some flashes for Buffalo.
Yeah, as a runner.
I think this has been a really good year for the NFL because of all these young quarterbacks coming in the league.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in this draft coming up.
I didn't see the final. Did you see the final of San Francisco, Seattle?
Yeah, San Francisco won by 3 in overtime.
How surprising is that?
Well, that's another game.
Really on a roll.
Seattle was on a roll, but just like the last game of the season for the Steelers that we were going to talk about with against the Bengals, San Francisco had a chip on their shoulder against Seattle. You got Richard Sherman.
Especially with all the anti-Richard Sherman talk today.
All the anti-Richard Sherman talk. Seattle blew them out and was pretty cocky about it the last time they played. So you saw, I mean, I had to watch. Unfortunately, I mean, it was nice because it was just the Steelers and the 49er games. It was going back and forth on our Sunday on the Red Zone channel. So I got to see almost all the Steeler games. They were split screen almost the entire time, which is 2 games. But San Francisco was, you could just see they had fire. They were ready to play. They didn't look like a team that was like looking towards the end of the season, getting Jimmy, getting Jimmy next year and coming back. They looked like they were just fired up to play. And they had Russell Wilson on the run on almost every single play that I watched. It's pretty crazy. But
So do you see any other surprises coming up?
I don't think so. It still looks like, the Rams in New Orleans, and I guess I'd still throw Kansas City in that mix. Still look like they're just a little step above everybody else.
And they'll be at home.
I think I've seen the Chargers play 3 times this year, and I saw 2 of their losses, and then I saw the game against the Steelers, which was not an impressive game for the Chargers.
No.
Like, I know they went into Pittsburgh and won, but if you watch that game, like, you had a punt return that could have been called back for 2 different blocks on the back. You had the freaky play where the Steelers knocked into each other, flipped the ball in the air, and the guy caught it for a touchdown. Like, it wasn't an impressive win if you're looking for those.
No, it wasn't.
And even when they beat Kansas City last week, this week or last week?
Last week.
Or this week, it was Thursday night.
Yeah, it was Thursday.
Obviously Kansas City was down a couple receivers. Tyreek Hill was playing, hurt. So, I mean, good on them. They're 11-3, which, in the old Dennis Green, you are, what is it? You are what you are.
Yeah.
That's your record. But
they are 11-3.
I still feel like Kansas City's a step above them, especially in the playoffs. And then I don't know what to think about New England, Pittsburgh, Houston. It's hard to imagine any of those teams like being able to run the table in the playoffs. To me,
you know what, Jace? 2005 Steelers Super Bowl against Seattle.
Yeah,
they had to win their last 6 games in a row.
Oh, I know.
If you're hot, playing well, that's what does it. This could be a real big game for the Steelers.
Yeah. Well, if they can somehow beat New Orleans next week,
yeah. I don't think they will, but I think that would be awesome if they did.
It'd be incredible. And again, just before we finish up on the NFL, the Steelers did beat New England again today, and we have to just say that one more time.
Yes.
Not just for Steeler fans, but for all the New England haters as well.
In fact, it was the last time, I think the first time they beat the Steelers since 2007.
Yeah, and Tom Brady made some non-Tom Brady plays today.
Yeah.
Because I don't think did the Steelers get 1 sack? They had pretty consistent pressure.
They had 1 sack.
Okay.
They had a sack.
But they had nice consistent pressure. They held Gronkowski down. Except for
pick was off of pressure.
Yeah, except for the one drive, they held him against the run too, and that pick was a very non-Brady pick. He just threw it up in the air off his back foot.
Yeah.
Now, granted, Joe Hayden is not anywhere near as big as Rob Gronkowski, but he still came down with that ball and made an incredible play for a team that never gets interceptions in the Pittsburgh Steelers.
All right, let's switch over to the NBA.
All right, where do you want to go with it?
Well, what was the stat? Did
LeBron double, triple doubles?
Triple-double by teammates was only one of 3 in history.
Yeah. One was Magic and Kareem.
And the first one ever for a teammate of LeBron, right?
Yes.
That's incredible to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you look at who he's played with over the years, I guess potentially, Wade or Kyrie would have been the only.
I thought Dwayne Wade or Kyrie would have had a triple-double in the same game as LeBron.
I mean, at the same time, though, I'm sure there's been games where, Kyrie had 8 assists, 25 points and 6,
I think it just really caught me by surprise. And they're playing well. They're like 16-5 or 16-7 in their last 23 games.
And the most important thing came after the game where LeBron seemed to really embrace and sort of endorse Lonzo. I mean, a guy that you thought coming into the season, mainly based on his dad, and then throughout the beginning of the season when he was really struggling, especially with the injuries, you thought Lonzo was a guy they wanted probably to get rid of. And now,
Rondo got hurt,
yeah.
which complicated all that.
But LeBron said, they're the same kind of player. We see the floor. We want to help each other out. We want to get teammates the ball. Like, he was all in on Lonzo. He sounded like, LeVar Ball talking about Lonzo for a minute. Minus all the crazy hyperbole. But you look at the West, and I know you wanted to talk about Oklahoma City, but outside of the Golden State Warriors, and we'll see, the Lakers could easily be the second best team in the West.
Sure. I mean, Utah looks good, but then they lose the games they shouldn't lose. They're kind of curious for me.
And Donovan Mitchell
actually has the best record in the last 25 games.
They do. They've been doing it with
defense. Because it's Carmelo ruined that team for me, and now that he's gone, and they're learning to play the way they should have played before, I'm pretty excited about watching them now.
Yeah, and they are playing. I mean, you kind of worry about them because they're playing, really hard defensive basketball, and they're only 20 games into the year. You wonder if they can keep that pace up.
Yeah.
And they've had a fairly easy schedule during this incredible stretch where I love Russ. We've talked Russ all day on this podcast.
Yep.
And I'm obviously rooting for Oklahoma. I want Oklahoma City to win, but I mean, it'll be interesting to see if they can sustain it. Denver's shown flashes. I don't think you can count Houston out, especially since Daryl Morey apparently is willing to throw, every first round pick they have for the next decade into a trade to get in.
Yeah.
Now who they can go get, I have no idea, but.
Well, I actually think the playoffs are going to be the most interesting they've been in about 5 or 6 years this year. Because for once, I don't think Golden State's a lock.
I think for the
playoffs, and they'll probably play well, but I don't think they're a lock to win.
I think if their core four are healthy going into the playoffs, Steph, Clay, Durant, and Draymond, even if they get nothing out of DeMarcus Cousins, I still think they're a lock in the West. When all four of those guys are there and they're healthy, they're still a machine.
They are. I just don't think they're going to have enough to get all the way to the ring this time.
Well, the team that's looked the most.
I'm a little disappointed what I've seen. The Celtics haven't been as dominant as I expected them to be.
No, but you look at that team, and you were trying to integrate two All-Stars who weren't part of their playoff run last year, and Kyrie and Gordon Hayward.
So they're going to take their time. They're going to work them in.
And since they've inserted the two,
I really like him as a coach.
Yeah, and then since they got rid of since they put Morris and your favorite Marcus Smart in the lineup, they've been unstoppable.
Marcus Smart's a tough player.
Yeah.
He's a guy that just makes things happen. He's always around the ball.
I think he's probably analytics people's least favorite player in the NBA.
Yeah, because he is not like he can't shoot well.
He can't shoot the three. He doesn't show up. But you talk to any coach in the league, any player in the league, and they understand exactly what he does. And when he's on the floor, they just win.
Yeah.
But by moving Gordon Hayward to the second unit, I think it's in Jaylen Brown. Now they're getting more shots. I mean, ultimately, I don't know if you have to find a way to get your best 5 players on the floor at the same time, if those even are their best 5 players. But your phone is making an odd noise. Yeah. Toronto Raptors. Speaking of Golden State, They've now beat Golden State twice, including by 20 points without Kawhi Leonard in Golden State on a back-to-back. I mean, their young guys have really, the last couple draft picks they've had have really stepped up. I mean, they're a very long, very versatile, very athletic team. They're well coached. People always forget, like, even last year before they had Kawhi, with most of these guys in their first or second year instead of their second or third year, they were the 1 seed in the East last year.
Oh, yeah. And coach got fired because they didn't win a series.
No, but I mean, Simile and, some of those other guys that they drafted over the last couple of years have really turned into great players. And they really fit, the system and the modern NBA, and they just look great. I mean,
yeah.
And I guess I wanted to have our Orlando Magic minute.
Yeah.
I know we have some Orlando Magic listeners, obviously. And, you did work with the Magic, and I was fortunate enough to get to watch them play in person a lot. And I feel like they're in a strange spot because they've been a losing team for so long. You understand why they don't want to do the process and tank this year. But at the same time, you've got guys like Vucevic who probably have their trade value as high as it's been in 5 years, who are free. He's a free agent next year. He's taking minutes away from your number one pick, Mo Bamba, who I assume is your future at that position. You've got guys like Terrence Ross, who's having an absolutely career year. He looks like the perfect 3-and-D guy that every team in the NBA is desperate for right now. You have Jonathan Simmons, a former Spur, another long, lanky wing that could help another team. And you even Evan Fournier, who again could be somebody's second guard off the bench. Like I just feel like, and you have a really strong draft. I feel like if you're the Magic, this may be the time to cash in all these chips on these guys, and then roll back. See what the draft. You kind of get your pick a little bit higher.
I don't think they're gonna do that though.
I don't think they are either. I understand, like, because you've been so.
I think Cleveland is.
Yeah, I just think it's the right move for the Magic. Like I know you've been so poorly run and you made so many bad decisions over the years. I mean, you even look right now. You look at Victor Oladipo and Sabonis, guys you had on your team that you traded for people like Serge Ibaka, who are absolutely killing it. Even Alfred Payton is. I mean, it seems like until you got this current coach, like you had talent on that team, you just kept blowing it. But this is a really strong draft. You've got a lot of guys in their last year and a lot of young pieces. Like it just seems like this is the time to cash in and to see what Because I think especially around the trade deadline, like a Vucevic, a Terrence Ross, Jonathan Simmons, you could probably get 110% of what they're actually worth for guys you're probably not going to have on your team next year.
I'm going to pick the teams with the worst record going in the lottery.
Yes.
It's going to be Cleveland and Phoenix.
Yeah. I think of those two, Phoenix is the only surprising one. Because you have Devin Booker.
Be better.
Yeah.
I would have definitely thought Phoenix would be better. But this fiasco with this trade the other day, not knowing who they were trading for, pulling it off, and not doing anything, and then making the trade, kind of makes me wonder who's running the asylum.
And you look at that trade, like, it seems like a lose-lose trade in my book. Nothing against Austin Rivers, but if you're Phoenix, you have guys like Josh Jackson, Miles Bridges, who are your wing players. And you brought in another wing player in Oubre, who you got in that Trevor Ariza deal, who, is a pending free agent, so you got to play him to see if you got anything in him. So I just feel like Ariza, even at 33, Ariza was probably worth an asset, future first. So I don't understand why instead you got Kelly Oubre, who, unless you're looking to flip him again at the deadline, I don't know if you can flip him again in February or not, but you added another body. You got your own guys you got to evaluate, and now you got another 23-year-old wing who's a free agent to be.
And the question always becomes, why did you just trade him for an asset rather than a player?
Yeah. Or if you're going to get him, it's one thing if you're getting a player on a rookie deal who's still got a couple years left, Like I said, Oubre's a free agent next year. So, and he plays the same position as Bridges and Josh Jackson. I know Josh Jackson has been somewhat of a disappointment for the number 3 overall pick a couple years ago. But I assume that's still a guy you want to evaluate. You still want to get on the court.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think, Austin Rivers has taken a lot of crap over the years. Maybe some deserved, maybe some not.
He's all that.
No, but I know you wanted to bring in, sort of a point guard, but he's more of a combo guard than he is a point guard.
Yeah.
And since you're already bad this year, and since you're already sucked this year, I don't know, even if he's worth a few more wins, is that something you even want to do? Again, I'm not trying to, convince every team to try and blow it up, but, maybe.
Well, the last thing I want to talk about basketball is Luka Doncic. Who I think is the best player to come in the league in 3 or 4 years.
And everybody sort of said that before the draft.
I know. And he really is.
And we talked about this a little bit last week. You said Phoenix, Phoenix, you said maybe they needed to, take the local kid, the big guy,
Well, I think that was a safe pick for them. And if they would have taken this guy that has been criticized. But I'll tell you what, they missed.
They missed, yeah.
This guy's the real deal.
Well, he's not,
He reminds me of Larry Bird.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's that good. I'm saying his game reminds me of Larry Bird.
Well, he's not like your standard European player from like a decade ago where you only have even Antetokounmpo, the Greek freak who you had, who slipped to like 16 in the draft. If you look at the footage of him the footage they had of him in the draft, it was like, there's a Bruder film of basketball,
Yeah.
It was this 7-footer just destroying everybody, and it was hard to tell, like, is he good? Is he not good? Doncic was the MVP of the second best league in the world. He's been playing with men since he was like 14. And again, he's in the highest league, and he's winning MVPs. He's winning championships. And he's another guy.
He's made people better.
Yes.
And that's what you want on a team.
And he's still only 19. And you figure if he ever gets serious about his nutrition, he could probably, I mean, not that he's, dependent on his athleticism. He did a good job of like, different paces on the floor, going faster, going slower. And again, I know we always bash analytics, but according to the analytics right now, as much as you can sort of, based on their clutch percentages, he's been the most clutch player in the NBA this year through the first quarter of the season. I mean, you saw the step back three he hit against, the Rockets the other day. That was, he's got veteran moves already at 19.
Yeah, Dirk's coach him a little bit. He's a nice ball player.
Yeah.
All right, baseball. No Bryce Harper signing yet. No Manny Machado signing yet.
No.
Machado's going to meet the Yankees this week. Bryce Harper's meeting the White Sox. You know what? I don't like either of them as an all-around member of my team. Manny Machado's got some issues. And Bryce Harper, I don't know if he's as good as he was 3 years ago, like we were talking offline.
No, I don't think he hasn't.
He turned down $300 million for 10 years, which tells me he wants 10 years and he probably wants 350. So somebody's going to really overpay. This is going to be a really overpaid contract. This is going to be, and I think it's going to be a mistake. This is going to be like an Albert Pujols.
I was about to say, is this another Pujols where the last 4 years are just regretting?
Yep. Yeah.
I could see that.
And I don't know if he's going to hold up for 10 years.
No.
He's had some injuries. The strikeouts are way up. I think he should have taken. I was shocked to get $300 million for 10 years and not move. I guess he had some issues with the organization. Otherwise, I'd have taken that and been ahead of the game. But
yeah, I was like, I think he's wanted out of the organization for the last 2 or 3 years.
Maybe that's the deal. So we'll see. Maybe the White Sox is a spot.
Well, he's been he's been. Yeah.
He'd be a dramatic improvement for them, and they have to do something to captivate the market because you're with the Cubs in the same market. So
yeah, but I feel like
it's worth another $30-40 million then for that.
Now I don't have the history of baseball that you do, but isn't the White Sox Cubs a little bit like Yankees Mets and even Lakers Clippers, where you're always the second team?
You're always the second team. And you're not in an area like Wrigley Field where there's a lot of stuff to do. You're in an area where you're in the hood, and people go in, go to the game, and get the hell out.
Yeah.
So, and you also have people probably, but you can, if you can start building a TV audience and start doing some things, maybe it's a good signing. I don't know, but you've got to do something to stay abreast with the competition in the market.
True.
And maybe if they sign him, it's credibility for them to sign some other people. So we'll see. They've been very transparent that they're rebuilding, so we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I did not have a good eating week in any way, shape, or form, health-wise or flavor-wise, so I have nothing to contribute on the food moments.
I went to an amazing donut shop in Fort Lauderdale called Mojo Donuts.
Okay.
And they were strong. It was a really good donut. I brought those in for the Dolphins employees one day. I thought they weren't as good as San Diego Donut Bar, but they were close. Really some interesting flavors.
Okay.
I'm in New York now. I'm going to go to Spark Steakhouse tomorrow night, which is the famous mob hit.
And I said good food.
That's always a phenomenal meal. So I've got that. I'm going to go to Patsy's, which is an old Frank Sinatra and New York Yankee hangout this week. I'm going to go to I'm going to have a great eating week this week. So I'm very excited about the week I'm going to have. I haven't had it yet, though.
Okay. Well, I started a new show. Counterpart.
Wait a minute. I did have a great meal last week.
Okay.
I had the best lasagna I've ever had in a restaurant in my life.
Oh, that's right. You tweeted about that and sent me a picture.
Anthony's Runway 84. Phenomenal. That's the best meal I had last week.
Nice.
By far. It was tremendous.
Okay. Well, I started Counterpart. I'm 3 episodes in. I know they just started their second season on Stars. It's a J.K. Simmons sort of political spy, maybe a hair of sci-fi thriller.
Yeah, you told me you were really into it. You thought J.K. Simmons did a really good job.
Yeah, but I'm 3 episodes in, and it's getting very interesting. Because again, the sci-fi part is pretty small. It looks a lot more at sort of nature versus nurture and character and things along those lines than it does anything really sci-fi. Like even like I said, this is in the trailer, but essentially there's sort of two parallel worlds, and we almost treat the two parallel worlds. The government sort of treat each other almost like another country. So even when you cross over, it's like crossing over a border. Like you walk through security, there's guards. Like it's not like a giant, bright light that you're walking through. It's literally like a tunnel, and then there's security guards on the other side that pat you down.
Okay.
And it's about trading intelligence back and forth, and then the world sort of diverged a little bit from a health and breakout standpoint, and it's negotiating. It's sort of a look at the world today, where it's like the one world has better technology, and the other world has better medical care, just based on where the worlds have gone. But rather than just giving our world, the certain vaccines and things along those lines that they've already advanced over there, they don't want to just give them away. They want to negotiate, so it's a little, it's interesting.
Sounds good. I will also, next week on the show, I'll give a review of two Broadway shows, To Kill a Mockingbird and Mean Girls.
Okay.
And To Kill a Mockingbird just opened with Jeff Daniels as Atticus Finch, and I'll get to see how that is. But we're going there Tuesday night, so I will report on those next week.
Yeah. Oh.
Other than that, we'll be talking to people before the holidays, so we can have our special holiday show.
Yes, and we'll be in the same room next time we talk.
That's right.
And we're hopefully going to be using our new recording that your son, my brother Dan, bought for us. So I played around with it a little bit. It's definitely going to improve the audio. We just haven't had a chance to use it yet. Let's see. Did we get to talk about the tweets from the Heisman winner?
No.
So obviously, what's the Oklahoma kid's name? Kyle Murray. So he won the Heisman, and as he's accepting his speech, a report breaks out online where they are showing tweets that he wrote when he was 14.
I hate that.
So, and a 14-year-old kid made some, there's some homophobic remarks. I'm like, but at the same time, you have to wonder, like, are we going to hold every 14-year-old, 13-year-old kid responsible for everything they've ever tweeted in the social media age? And on top of that, why is that the moment that's picked? He's been at Oklahoma for a long time. He was a high school kid, a college kid. Like, why do you wait till his crowning achievement in college, the Heisman Trophy, to put this story out? I don't like it. It just seems wrong.
I don't like it. But also, you know what? It just does send a message, though. That, again, you got to be careful when you write this stuff because it's around forever.
It does.
You got to be smart. You got to be smart about it.
Without a doubt. I know, obviously, the parallel was the Oscars with Kevin Hart stepping down because of tweets he made, some time ago. Again. And again, I don't know how sincere.
Forever.
Yeah.
People have to learn. It's a shame people are paying a price, but people have to learn that social media is forever, and somebody's going to have it. And if you say something, you should probably say that. I mean, I've been so anti-Trump on Twitter the last 6 months. If I ever ran for office, people would be pulling these tweets out that I put out. So, I mean, I understand, but I'm not going anywhere at 67 years old.
But I think there's also, glass houses, stones, that whole thing.
Yeah.
To hold everybody to these ridiculous standards that, probably nobody can pass. And certainly if anyone was not the good enough person that they could pass that standard, they probably wouldn't be calling other people out because they're probably good people. And just the precedent that it sets, because I don't know, I don't like it.
It's such a precedent that's going to keep happening. That's the precedent sets. And so, again, you've got to be careful. You can't be stupid if you're having, no matter how old you are, you have to think about your life and your future, where you're going to go. And you don't have to put it and make it public record. Don't make it public record.
No, like I said,
It's a shame. I mean,
Well, I know everybody loves to mock the. You're not a Game of Thrones person, but
And that's probably where it was, Jay. Somebody from Alabama probably took it and threw it out there.
probably. And I know you're not a Game of Thrones person, but I don't want to see us end up like the Sparrow when he takes over Westeros, and he basically is making people walk down the street naked while people yell and spit at them, and there's a bell ringing behind them saying shame, 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 shame.
Yep.
Because that's not where we need to go either, and that's where these people
No,
are
it's
pushing
not.
it.
But we got to be smarter.
We got to be smarter, but we also have to be. I mean,
Once you put it out there, somebody's going to take it and they're going to use it for what they want to use it for. And you can't defend it because you said it. And they're not asking you to defend it. They're just taking it and putting it out there. Here's what you said. Or here's what this person said. Or here's the video. Or here's whatever it is. You know?
yeah,
Everybody's a reporter in 2018. Everybody has a cell phone. Everybody has commentary. And everybody has the power to bring people down. And since the dawn of time, Jason, we've always liked to take down our heroes. We like to elevate our heroes, but there's always somebody out there that wants to take them down.
yeah. I just, I don't like the direction that that's going.
I don't either.
I don't think I don't think it's productive. I don't think it's helpful. I don't think it's a teaching. Like I see somebody. I mean, because I think it's a product of other. I mean, this is probably a little slightly off, but I mean, you look at people that they can't wait to shame somebody on social media,
Right.
rather than like talk to that person and use it as a teaching moment or as a productive moment. They want because it's not. I don't think it's done in the right. I think it's done to glorify themselves.
That probably happens. There's probably people that do that.
I think that's the majority of those people. I think they're out for their own attention. They want to be like,
Social media is.
right.
That's why there's people are making millions and millions of dollars for being idiots on social media. Because
Yeah.
people want to follow people that are interesting. And somebody helping somebody's not interesting. Somebody digging up dirt. Look at TMZ. Look at that business.
Oh, I know, and it's become the TMZ of sports and all that other stuff. I find it interesting when people help other people.
I find it interesting too, but it's not social media news work. It is. I mean, I tweeted something today. A picture of a kid unwrapping a Christmas present. It's his dad back from the military. It was really cool.
Yeah, but
It was a heartwarming moment.
you've seen what psychological people say why they don't like that? Because it makes people feel like they're not doing enough themselves. So rather than being inspired and going out and doing something nice, they'd rather see negative stuff because it makes them feel better about themselves, which is really pathetic. I'm just going to leave it at that. And I'll get off my high horse, but
All right. So we will talk again on December 23rd.
yes, we will. With new audio and
Show before the holidays.
in person, when you want a microphone. So,
And Jason, I will be previewing my SBJ column for January of the things I would like to see in my new year of 2019.
okay.
So I'll preview the column on the show.
I think that's a lot to look forward to. So, and safe travels to everybody. I know some people are either done with school and work or they still have a little bit left, but, safe travels. Have a good holiday. In the non-denominational way, just have a good holiday.